is you have to give me your primary articles that you want to use at least in your introduction section, because it's required to use a minimum of 3 peer-reviewed articles in your entire lab report. Listen, most of the time people end up using like 10 to 20, but you need at least 3. Now here's the thing, if somebody's writing on the burette and someone else is writing on the burette, you can't use the same 3, because it will come up as a plagiarism report when you go and enter into Turnitin.com. So to avoid those issues, and plus to really not have an exact same lab report, you have to use 3 different ones. So there's going to be a master list. Right now there's nothing on there, but I'll show it to you, and I will add them to that list. If you see somebody else already using it and it's for that lab report, you cannot use it. So to find out which lab you're even assigned, you just have to go to lab report individual assignment, and you would just go on here. And so this is going to be what every single one is going to be assigned. Let me get this actually up so you can see it better. Here it is. So then this is what it would look like. So if you were looking at the lab report like assignments, these are the ones you'd be writing on. So you don't get a choice. It's exactly these. And so what you're going to do is it says citation, citation, citation. I will fill these in for you. So this is the part where you will send them to me via email, or you can write it on a piece of paper. I don't even care if it's just an abstract you're reading. I just have to make sure that it's legitimate sources, that they actually pertain to what you're doing, and then you can go and not have the same as other people. Because if you do, it's going to show up as like plagiarism. I don't want it to do that to you. And to be honest, it also makes sure that 2 people are not writing together, because they really shouldn't be. So again, these are going to be your individual assignments for the labs. It tells you which lab we did it. So labs 2, 4, 5, and 6, we did actual experiments. And so those were the ones that you're going to be writing on. Now, of course, this way you can also see, like, okay, so we have Emma doing the Benedict's test. And then if you went in another class, Gabriel C is going to be doing the Benedict's test. You could talk to each other and be like, all right, let's try to collaborate on this. We're each writing our own individual report. We're each using different citations, but you at least know who else is writing it. So this way you can talk to one another. There's nothing wrong with that. Even if you were going to be in a normal lab in a graduate or a high-level undergraduate course, you still talk to one another. So that's why I put this on here, so it's not some giant mystery. You can definitely talk to each other to figure out how you want to do this. Or you can say, like, you know what, I'm really having problems with this. Yes, I'm having problems with this too. You can come to me and I'll set you up with a lab assistant who can kind of help you with all of this. So the Writing Center does not do scientific writing. If you went down to our Writing Center, they can definitely help you with any type of technical writing, so citation use and things like that. But, and again, it's all free, but if you go and you do it through me, I'll get you set up with people that did it well last year from the freshman class. They're now sophomores. Or I also have people that are hired that actually assisted it too. So I could do it either way. But again, the more individual basis you do it on and the better you do without help, you have a better chance of being a lab like group leader. Yep. Yeah. So, actually not lab group leader, sorry. Grammar proposal group leader. So, but yeah, everything is on here. Yeah, yours is separation of type witness. And so, again, if you guys end up having like any confusion with these, just tell me, but for the most part, it tells you exactly which lab it was. All the PowerPoints are still up. You should have your lab assignments and all of your results. And so again, that's the other thing. Like, let's say the iodine test, Valentina has to write on it, but for hers, she's like, oh crap, I'm missing the pictures. What you can then do is see from the other class who is writing on the iodine test. Linda is, so you can go to Linda and be like, hey, I'm really missing my pictures. Do you have any? Now, if both of you are missing the pictures, you're up a shit's creek. But for right now, hopefully somebody has them. And so you can talk to another, absolutely nothing wrong with that. You can even brainstorm, absolutely nothing wrong with that. You just have to type your own stuff, and you have to make sure you're using your own citations. So that's the main thing to go on. So that's going to be the first file that you'd be looking at, is going to just see what lab you're even writing on. Now, as we're going into the teacher's notes, I'm just going to show that one next. This is a cheat sheet I started writing a few years ago, and I update it every time we have like a new group for doing the lab reports. This is meant to give you the backbone of what you have to do. So for this one, you have to find what your lab would be. So if you knew your lab was going to be assigned as, let's say, doing lab 5, I had tonicity of red blood cells. This is my cheat sheet for you to show you the backbone of what I'm expecting. So in the introduction section, each of these should be a paragraph. What are red blood cells? Explain it in a paragraph. And again, this is not just looking it up on the internet. You could use your lab manual, you could use your textbook. Both of those you would have to cite, but you could use them. Everybody could use those. So that is not something that just one can use. And then you could also use the peer-reviewed articles you find. So that would be one paragraph. The second paragraph, what are hypoosmotic, hyperosmotic, and isoosmotic solutions? Explain that. And then the third paragraph, what is your hypothesis? So what are you trying to study regarding these red blood cells? You write about tonicity. And so that's your third paragraph. This sounds easy until you start doing it, but this is the hardest part. If you can get through an introduction section, you're actually okay. On average, I want a page to a page and a half. That's going to be single-spaced. And so this is like writing what we call a literature review. It's an analysis that's going to be done on that topic. You're basically writing what's already previously known until you get to the hypothesis, and that is what you're testing. So for the results section, because the materials and methods is easy, you're just like writing what you did. Most of that comes from the lab manual, not exactly word for word, what you're doing. The results section, you should have 3 pictures of your red blood cells with proper labels, with showing like all the different types of test tubes. If you have 1 picture, that's fine too, but in general, I still need to see all the test tubes labeled. And then, what did you find? Are they turgid, or are they going to be like, what did you get? So the discussion section, that's not just a picture with a sentence under it. That's going to be an actual definition of like, okay, what did I get? So what do the pictures found in your results mean? So what happened to the red blood cells within each solution? That would be 1 paragraph. Second paragraph, what type of solutions have they been known to prefer based on academic studies? Second paragraph of your discussion, you're always putting in academic studies to say how you compare your results to what is currently out there. And then the third paragraph, why do we give a crap? So in other words, you did all of this, so why do we care about these findings? And so you're giving what's called a broader impact statement, because in scientific writing, even if you're going and you're analyzing results, you still have to think of like, why? So why am I doing this? So you can write about all different diseases where you have high and low amounts of salts or solutions or things like that, how it affects it. You can even write diabetes, you can write about all different things, but point being is you have to say why. And again, academic studies have to be in there, not just some idea on top of your head. Yep.
So we're kind of writing like our own like unofficial grammar. I mean, what basically, right?
You're exactly doing that, yeah. By the time you're doing this, you literally are learning what you'd have to do when you go to like a regular, like higher level undergraduate, graduate school.
Because I read like the introduction results section, I was like, wait, that's exactly what I'm doing.
That's exactly what you're doing. Yeah. So like literally very smart because you're doing exactly that. So the reason I do this is because like when I went to school, even as a freshman, I had to do this, and I had to do this weekly. You're only doing this once in the whole year. I literally did this every single week. And so when you go to good colleges, they're going to expect this. And if you're not taught this, you are going to drown the second you enter, especially if you're in the sciences, because you have to write so many of these. So this is to kind of protect you and teach you how to do that now, and you will go on having absolutely no problems. And so a lot of you, even by your senior year, I'll hire you to actually be writing assistants and stuff like that here. You can do research. Like this will open up a world to you. Even when you go to do your internships, I can give recommendations based on like, yes, they know how to do this, they know how to read studies, they know how to do things. So it is going to get you like a foot in a lot of doors. We can actually, like Chris and I can tell you how many places just tell us the #1 reason they love our students is they can write. And so it's one of the reasons that I push the scientific writing so much here. So as we're going into the introduction section in general, if you want to like really go through it piecemeal by piecemeal, when I was during COVID, teaching this is extremely difficult to do virtually. So what I did was I tried to create this PowerPoint, and it kind of just had like a lot of pointers on it. So I don't want to like waste too much of your time and go through it all now. You can read it over, you know what I mean, to see if you understand it, but it should help a lot. So let me just do the slideshow. Okay. So this one is going to be, just let me go. No. So this will have all the instructions. So it will even tell you like what I'm expecting for your introduction sections, that they must contain at least like 3 primary sources. And then it just, in other words, every single time you use a citation, it has to be for something that's not your own information. Even if you learn something, it's not considered your own information because you didn't come up with it. So even if you say, like, plants go and absorb light and they're going to go and create glucose molecules, you didn't learn that, like, you didn't actually go and write the manual on it, you got taught that. So you would actually reference the information where it came from. Your textbooks are an excellent reference source for this. So it's Understanding Biology is the name of the textbook. If they have to order more, tell them now to the school because it's going to take time. But you can also find, I think, free copies online as well. So this again is just telling you before 12/23, that's the only thing I need is your 3 primary articles before that date. So before you go for break, I need to have your 3 articles to make sure that you're starting that introduction section. Because the few weeks that, again, we don't see each other, you really should be working on this to not, kill yourself with too much work when you return. The final product after all your drafts is not due until 3/4 or 3/5, depending upon your class. But in general, the introduction section is going to take the longest, and it's going to be in pieces that you have to do all of this. So, again, read through the PowerPoint, there's tons of info, and that would be that part. Now, as for the primary articles, that's the same thing I was showing you before. You would just give me the 3, and then I'll put them on here. So that this master list that's on here, that's where that's located, is it's going to be under this heading. You would just click on it. Now, the Universal Lab Report Guidelines, this document is going to help you for, again, doing greater detail on writing any lab report anywhere. So this universal guideline is something you should keep. It can work for here, it can work for Princeton, it can work for Harvard, it can go and work for if you went overseas. Like, this is everywhere. They're written this way, and this is the ones I base mine on. How to do citations, all of it. So everything's inside of there. But if you want to see how you're graded, this is going to be yours. So this is going to be the lab report guidelines exactly by section and kind of just briefly what has to be inside each of them. And so again, for this, the first step you're having to this is just like I told you. By the 23rd, just hand me your 3 articles, that's it. And I just have to make sure each of you have different ones. Step 2 is going to have different dates depending upon if you're Wednesday or Thursday when you see me. But the introduction section is worth 60 points, materials and methods 15, results 25, discussion 60. So everything's on here. But for the most part, this gives you a brief introduction into what is going to be required for those sections. And it gives you all the due dates too, so everything is on here. So you'll notice, I see you again by the 14th of January. Within 1 week of then, you are going to already have to hand me your first draft of your introduction. So that means those couple of weeks I don't see you, again, take some time off during the holiday break, but then start writing this as much as you can. This is not something you just do overnight. But again, it's going to just tell you to make sure you do citations correctly and everything else. And again, citations, the way they're done is you should make sure that any sentence that's not your own information, you have to go and cite it. So you have to put citations of an author. If it's one author, it's the author year. If it's 2 authors, it's author and author in the year. If it's 3 or more authors, it's author et al. And then it's going to be again the year. Where I put that information on how to do that was going to be within this section where it says teacher's notes. It's going to be at the top of it. It'll actually tell you. So that you just have to make sure, and again, make sure you have a complete citation for every sentence that is not your own information. And I'll show you what I'm talking about in a minute, because I'll give you an example of some of the ones that were written previously, because that will definitely help. Now, this is where you're going to be dumping each of these. Do you notice introduction first draft worth 0 points? Materials and methods worth 0 points. Discussion first draft worth 0 points. These are different due dates, but they're not worth points, but you have to hand them in. So if somebody doesn't give me the introduction first draft, it's just a 0 on the lab form. I don't care how bad it is, just give me something, I can edit it, and then I will hand it back to you. So the better you do, if you do a really good job on all the first drafts, you're basically done with the lab report by the 18th of February, and you're just finished, and then your final draft, you barely have to do anything. Those are the people that I'll be going and making sure that are going to be your group leaders for any of the grant proposals, and again, you get extra credit for this. That will actually boost your grade by about 3%. So if you're at an 89, you get a 92. Not only that, it's worth 100 points, the extra credit. So at the end of the year, if you do not want to take your final lab exam or your final test, you can actually use the extra credit towards that instead, and you basically get to skip a test. So there are incentives to be the group leader, plus you get to choose what the grant proposal topic will be on. You get to choose one person you'll write it with, I choose the other 2. And so we've been doing it this year for years, and it works very well. We even grade each other with the peer review, so everyone has to get along. So again, everything is here for how this works for the lab report. And as for the actual examples, these are just some of them that should go and should help you explain. And so if you go, these were previously the ones that were written by others. And so this would just be an example. So Riley wrote this one. And so she was writing about ethanol and how it affects cells. If you notice, what she did was she put the author of the year, the author of the year, the author of the year. Almost every single sentence has that because none of this was her own information. It came from her primary articles. And so this is how she was saying how ethanol affects the body. Then she was writing about how alcohol is going to be basically affecting cells. So then what she was going and doing by the end is because we were working with beet extract, and so it was going to be something that was going to go and have like ethanol destroy it. But she would write the exact materials and methods of how this is done, and so that came a lot of it from the lab manual. Then the results that they obtained, and they saw like what happened with the concentration of ethanol as it increased. The color decreased from the beet, which means that the cells were getting destroyed, and so she explains that. And then she went into the discussion section that was also basically saying like how compared to other results, and then like why we actually care in the first place. So like this is important to notice and show people how much ethanol use can affect one's body. People might want to realize how much ethanol affects model cells, things like that. And so this was again not the longest thing on earth, but these were the citations at the end that were used. It does take a long time to write this. So Riley did an absolutely amazing job on that. Yep. No, that's alcohol. You're thinking like sucralose and stuff like that. This one, you definitely don't want alcohol in the body that much. That's like what we produce during the fermentation. That's going to be, I'm trying to see if I can find it. That's the one that saves the lines, like, yeah, the bacteria is the one that can't stevia is one of them. So this one's another example, by the way. They wrote an abstract, but you don't have to write an abstract. So the introduction section, again, notice that after every single sentence, what they did was they went and they put basically some type of citation. So that's how you do the citation. You're doing APA, you are not doing MLA. APA format is what you have to do. You are taught in a lot of English classes to do MLA, and it's useless. You are never going to use it in scientific writing in your life. And your entire career, you will never use it. You will only use APA format. This is going to teach you APA format. Your school has actually gotten better because now that I've spoken to them, they've switched over, so some of your history classes now use APA, but not everyone does. So again, if you want to know how to do it, look to these examples, and if yours is not looking like these, then something's wrong. And so these are just some examples of the lab reports, but what I would do is honestly read through the information, start finding your primary articles, see if this is like how hard this is going to be. Go to see the other people that are writing similar things and make sure you have all the pictures and everything else you're supposed to have. And then start reading the material and just be like, all right, am I going to need help on this? And then take a look, talk to the other people that are writing the similar ones, and then also make sure that if you need their writing assistance, they can help you. They're not helping you with the topic, but the writing itself and citation use and things like that, I definitely have people that can help with that. So that's everything on it, but do you have any questions on it at all, Mike? Question to you, yeah.
So like before break, we have to give you our 3 articles.
That's the only thing you have to do before break.
If
Yes.
we want to use more articles after the fact,
Send them all you want. Some people have used up to 20. So
is it okay if we send it the other articles after the 3 after break?
perfectly fine.
Okay.
You can even send them like, I literally will take them up to 24 hours before the thing is actually due. And I just throw them on there. And so the more the better. Some topics are easier to find them, some are not. So it just depends. And by the way, anyone writing on iodine, you tested iodine for starches. If anyone writes about iodine and how it's used for medical purposes, you did not clean wounds in that lab. So do not write about cleaning wounds with iodine. That's not what it was used for. It was not used for sterilization. It was used for finding starches. So just warning the people about iodine is crazy easy, but just make sure you look. Yep.
I have diffusion through a semi-permeable membrane. What's like an example of a hypothesis that you could use for that?
Well, the hypothesis was based on what you did for that actual lab. It was actually a lab that was based on the video questions, but what were they tested for? That would be your hypothesis.
Okay.
There's actually going to be one similar on here, so you can go and take a look too.
Okay.
But yeah.